Welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We have John Warrillow here, and John is an expert on helping business owners just like you build, accelerate, and harvest the value of a business, of your business. He has books out called Built to Sell, Creating a Business That Can Thrive Without You. He has The Automatic Customer, Creating a Subscription Business in Any Industry, and The Art of Selling Your Business, Winning Strategies and Secret Hacks for Exiting on Top. So the way that John just now laid it out for me is there is the building aspect of it, there's the scaling aspect of it, and the exiting aspect of it. So we might cover all three or dive deep into one. We'll just see how things will go. This is an improvisational session. John, glad to be talking to you.
Yeah, it's good to be with you.
And so you have all this kind of these pillars set up. You have all these like business accomplishments. But what has been your personal focus, your passion for the last 6 or 12 months or so? What is recent with you, and what has you fired up?
Wow. Right now, we're launching a brand new product, which has me fired up. I don't know if I can talk too much about it yet, but effectively, we're trying to solve for an issue that I think a lot of entrepreneurs face, which is how do you document your standard operating procedures? And so we built some software to make that easier. And it's not out yet, but I'm really excited about that. We've been spending a ton of time focused on that because that's kind of in the theme of what we talk about. How do you build a valuable business? Well, it's making sure that it doesn't depend on you personally. And so, standard operating procedures, instructions for your employees is a big part of making that possible. So kind of behind the scenes, we've been working hard on that.
Well, I think I can see how that relates to your existing teachings and your existing book, because if, like you said, if they buy one book or they buy one piece of it, then the kind of the common thread there is the standard operating procedures. And this seems to be like the worst known secret, right? Anyone who I talk to on a podcast, it seems like there's kind of are you messing around? Is it a hobby, or is it a machine that maybe is on the way to running itself or can running itself? That way, you're not just building yourself a second job. And everyone kind of has their own way of teaching it. And it almost seems like they invented it, except for it's like kind of the E-Myth all over again. And like the magic of like why McDonald's is so successful, because everything is step by step, and even a 17-year-old can do it. So what is your maybe like special spin on this subject? What is your secret sauce? Because so many people already talk about systematizing your business, but then everyone has their own kind of uniqueness to it. So what's your uniqueness? What do you kind of teach differently that others don't about this whole systematizing scaling thing?
Yeah, well, I can't tell you exactly too much about the product itself because we're not ready to talk live about it. But I can tell you what I think one of the reasons most standard operating procedures efforts sort of fail. Because again, I think like you, a lot of entrepreneurs have heard this idea of, I need to standardize my operating procedures and create systems and work on that in my business. Like those aren't new messages for anyone. Where I think we get tripped up is in the execution of that. Because here's what I found. A lot of entrepreneurs tend to be good at starting things, but not necessarily process people. Have you ever taken your Colby? Have you ever heard of a Colby index?
I've heard of it. I have not taken that psychology test now.
So similar like a Myers-Briggs, Kathy Colby came out with this test, and it evaluates people on these 4 dimensions. Everybody's got a little bit of each one. It's not a bad or a good thing. It's just everybody has a little bit of each one. They're called, see if I get this right, Fact Finder, which is the dimension that measures your desire to get facts before you make decisions. Follow through is the inclination to build processes and systematize and make systems out of chaos. That's called follow through. The third attribute is called quick start, which is the desire, the inclination to start lots of things, but not necessarily finish a lot, like instigate a lot of things, action oriented, et cetera. Then the fourth is called implementer, which is when you're good with your hands, you can build things. And I remember I used to be part of something called the Strategic Coach. And every quarter I get together with a bunch of other entrepreneurs, and Dan Sullivan had us do our Colby test. And this goes back 20 years for me. And he had us do all these 4 dimensions. And he said, okay, how many of you are fact finders? Do a score of at least 7 out of 10 on fact finder. And like 1 or 2 hands went up in the air. How many of you, and maybe there were 60 of us in the room, how many of you are follow through, right? And like 1 hand goes in the air. Like nobody is high on follow through among these 60 entrepreneurs. And then he says, okay, well, does anybody have high quick start in the room? And literally like every hand goes up, like 60 hands in the room go up. And that's the issue. We are, for most of us entrepreneurs, again, whether that's a WordPress person, a marketing agency owner, a blogger, somebody who owns internet business, we tend to be really good at the starting, the idea piece of the business, but taking it from there to systematizing it, it's just not the way our brains think. And so we get the idea of, we got to create standard operating procedures. And then we sort of get paralyzed because we're, either we overthink it or we just think it's just too big an issue to crack and we avoid it. And so what we're trying to do is build software for quick starts, people who aren't necessarily inclined to create process. And again, it's still under the hood and can't talk much more about it, but I think it's going to be a game changer. So I'm excited about it.
Well, awesome. We'll keep the mystique. We won't go too much into the details, but it is still good to like philosophize, pontificate a little bit about that, because what you're making me think of randomly is, like when I was a kid, my parents kind of would force me into like, doing things and sticking with it. Cause as a kid, it's good to have hobbies and sports and things like that. But they made me stick with baseball for 3 years. They made me stick with band for 5 years. And for some reason, I kind of learned the wrong thing. I learned that, well, if I'm not good at something, if I have a weakness, then I should really try to fix that up and become more well-rounded. And I guess maybe it's true sometimes if you're like really bad at something, get to like acceptable level. But I kind of fell into that trap for a bunch of childhood years of just like, if I was bad at a thing and not necessarily scared of it, just bad at it, I would be trying to increase the skill, even though it didn't really pay off. And then, decades later, when you get into entrepreneurship and people talk about outsourcing, delegating, team building, then there's this maybe new idea that, well, if you have strengths and weaknesses, why not strengthen your strengths? And why not, if you have these weaknesses, why not go and hire someone else to fill in the weaknesses? And that's just kind of what's coming to mind here, as far as if there's if there's someone who's good at the processes and documenting, why force yourself? Why put yourself through this when there's a whole world of people you can hire for not even as expensive as you think, or not even for as long of a growing pains period as you think? Why not just get that done? And why not have a person or like your upcoming piece of software or something do that? That way you don't have to suffer through like just slogging through your weaknesses. So that's what comes to mind here, is why not strengthen your strengths?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And I think you've got to do it intelligently if you're an entrepreneur, because I don't know about you, but when I talk to entrepreneurs, in particular ones that are involved in the kind of e-commerce world, internet world, they tend to be good communicators and good influencers. They're good at the sales pitch, in particular non-technical founders, and they're good at talking and influencing people. And so what I think a lot of entrepreneurs do is say, okay, great, I should be on the business development side. I should be sales, marketing. I should be talking to customers and winning clients. And then I hire people to do the work. The challenge with that is, I think you end up in what we call the rainmaker's dilemma, which is that companies grow very quickly for the first few years and then stall. And the reason for that is you run out of hours in the day, and your business will only be able to generate enough revenue that you can personally sell. And those businesses generally stall in terms of size, but they also stall in terms of value, because again, it's not going to be worth anything to somebody else if you're the one doing the rainmaking. And I remember I actually went years ago now, I went to a course at MIT, fancy school, obviously. I did not get into MIT, to be clear. I went like as an exec ed, sort of paid my way into this program called the Birthing of Giants. It's got, like, to this day, it's the most pretentious name for a course ever, but it was an entrepreneurship course, effectively, since been rebranded. But it's called the Birthing of Giants. We heard from all these amazing speakers. Pat Lencioni talked about dysfunctions of a team. Jack Stack, the guy who wrote A Stake in the Outcome, talked about like employee ownership. And then a guy came in, Watkins, I think it was his name, who had just sold a company. And there's about 65 of us in this amphitheater style seating. He's like, all right, how many of you guys and gals are involved in selling your product or service? And like all of us like little 4-year-old kids in like junior kindergarten, like raise our hands saying, oh, me, pick me. Like we're all proud of the fact that we are selling our product or service. And he's like, all right, put your hands down. And he's like, you all have the right skills. You're selling the wrong product. You got to hire salespeople to sell your product. And you've got to inject those same sales and marketing and influencing skills into selling your company. You make a few $1,000s when you sell your product. You can make many millions when you sell your company. And like, for me, that message like hit me straight between the eyes, because I was really building my business at the time thinking that I would be bought for our revenue or our profits or our client list. None of that matters if you are the one driving the bus, right? And so he was like, you've got all the right skills, but man, you got to sell the company, not the product. And that was like, it was game changing for me at the time. Again, this goes back many years now.
And that's interesting to think about there, that like, you know, there's all those factors that you listed, like the product, it's like intellectual property and like the monthly revenue and things like that. But yeah, if you're the glue that's holding it all together, and if someone is buying it saying, well, if I'm buying it, but that it does not come along with you as my new employee, then isn't it all going to fall apart? And, you know, you're also making me think about, you know, I have a couple of friends who had this dream of saying, well, I'm going to build this app and I'm going to build the company and get employees and then find a buyer for $10 million. And then years pass, and it seems like these guys sort of gave up on that dream. And it made me wonder, as someone just from the outside looking in, just being this guy's friend, not really seeing the inside of his business, wondering like, well, I wonder if at some point they forgot about that goal. I wonder if they had woken up every morning for 5 years, 10 years, raising awareness about their company, or like talking to whoever they needed to be talking to, hiring whatever coach, just making whatever connections. I wonder if they had spent all the years slowly getting towards that goal of finding a buyer or talking to whoever they needed to talk to. But it seems like these guys just kind of fell into running the business, which again, like, it seems like, well, isn't that what I'm supposed to be doing? But like, this is a weird concept here of like, almost like you need to be like the God who's looking down from the clouds at everything else. And it's just like, it's so hard to get one's head wrapped around, because this business that you build, it's like an expression of your own personality. So then it's almost like losing a piece of yourself. So it's like all this psychological kind of just oddities at play here.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think in many of us start businesses as, to scratch an itch, that we feel needs to be kind of itched. And oftentimes they're growing around a problem that we personally kind of feel like solving. And we need to, I think, recognize that a lot of businesses reach a point where life's good, right? You've got a few $100,000 in sales. You maybe have one or two helpers that eliminate some of the kind of really annoying tasks in your business. You're running all your expenses through your business, and you get to a point where, hey, this is pretty good, right? Like, I don't, this is great. I'm all good. And that happens for, I think, in a lot of cases, the lucky ones. And making some of these changes to go from that to building a business that actually can live without you, that's a hard bridge to cross. And many choose not to cross it, right? They've got a lifestyle business that they're happy with, and it's paying the bills, and that's fine. And then there's another group of entrepreneurs who say, no, I want the freedom that comes from having a business that's not dependent on me. And that's the folks that need to take the bridge across that I'm describing, which is to structure it so that it's not dependent on you. Otherwise, you may have some of the benefits of entrepreneurship, but you kind of have sort of all of the liabilities of entrepreneurship, working all the hours of the day and night, clients at your beck and call, or being at your beck and call to your clients, et cetera, without the upside of a job where, you could turn it off at 9 to 5, after 9 to 5, or you could have a 401k, you can have health benefits. Like, you don't get any of the good benefits of having a job yet. In fact, if your business is deeply dependent on you, you kind of have a job, right? It may be a glorified job, it's a dressed up job, but it's still a job. And so I think that's, in a lot of ways, kind of no man's land. So I'm a big believer in trying to make that bridge to, okay, I need to have a business that doesn't really depend on me. And then I've got all the cards, right? Then I can just cherry pick the fun things to do. I can sell half of it and put some money in my jeans. I can sell all of it. You've got a lot of options when your business is not dependent on you.
Well, John, this is great, and these are a lot of interesting things to think about and talk about. And you have these 3 books, and so I like what you said. How do you want a glorified job, or do you want these choices? So that way you can continue to have this glorified job if you want, or if later on, if you get tired, if you have new, even better ideas, right? New itches to scratch, you can go move off in different directions. But there's so much information to kind of maybe begin to drip on ourselves and to think about. And like, you have your 3 books, but in these final maybe 4 or 5 minutes of our conversation, what would you say is an easy win, or a next step, or something to think about? Because again, everyone talks about standard operating procedures and like finding good people and like thinking about the bigger picture, but in practical terms, for all of us listening, in the next maybe even 6 to 12 months or so, what should be our focus, and what should be the actions that we're taking that a lot of people are not taking?
I'll give you one simple one, and that is to stop cross-selling. A lot of your, pundits, authors, consultants say, hey, well, you've got to cross-sell your existing customers a new product because it's 10 times cheaper to sell your existing customers a new product. And while that is true, it also can increase your revenue, but undermine the value of your business. Why is that the case? Well, when an acquirer looks at your business, they're going to make a build versus buy decision, right? Like, do I want to buy this company, or do I want to compete with it effectively? And if they see your business as just a mixture of products, some of which you're differentiated on, others of which you are an afterthought or a secondary player, you have no point of differentiation, they're going to draw the conclusion that it's better to compete with you. Because like when you buy cable television and you have to buy 300 channels to get the 2 that you actually want, like nobody likes that feeling, right? You actually want to just buy the one thing that you really desire. So people want to buy, or acquirers want to buy companies where they do one thing better than anybody else. I'll give you an example. There's a woman I interviewed for Built to Sell Radio named Stephanie Breedlove, and she did payroll for nannies who have for parents who have a nanny to pay. And so kind of a very unique niche in this kind of world of payroll services, just parents who have a nanny to pay. And she built it up to about 300 grand in revenue. It's just Stephanie and one assistant at the time. And it was starting to become more difficult for her to find parents who had a nanny that they needed to pay. And so she thought, okay, well, how do I grow this business? And she was looking at 2 different roads. The first was to cross-sell her existing customers a new product, right? So she's like, okay, what do busy parents need? Well, they need childcare, and they need dog walking services, and they need snow removals, all these crazy services, right? That she could have cross-sold, and it would have been a whole lot cheaper to acquire clients of that other service because she already knew the customers. They were already doing business with her. The much more difficult road was to go find more parents who have a nanny to pay. It was going to become much more difficult. She would have to grow much more slowly. And to her credit, she said, I never got into business to do dog walking services. I want to do payroll for parents who have nanny to pay. So she said, I'm going to grow this company more slowly, but I'm going to do it focused on our one unique, compelling niche, which was payroll for parents who have a nanny to pay. 25 years goes by, and she builds this company up to $9 million in revenue. So if you're doing the math, I mean, this is not Tesla, this is not Google, this is not some fast growth, Uber growth company. It's just kind of plodding along for 25 years, builds it up to $9 million in revenue. She decides kids are out of the house. She wants to sell the business. She looks out in the landscape and says, who would have a strategic reason to buy this business? And she discovers care.com. They have 7 million subscribers. And she says, we're 9 million in revenue on the backs of 10,000 customers. If 1% of the 7 million subscribers to care.com, Robert, do you know care.com? Do you know what they do?
No.
You probably don't have kids. You plug in your zip code into their search bar, care.com, and they will give you a list of 5-star rated babysitters and caregivers in your town. It's kind of like the Angie's List for plumbers and electricians, but for caregivers.
Well, I have a 17-month-old, so I will be using that very soon.
Care.com, man, it's going to be a lifesaver for you. So anyways, care.com looks at this and they've got 7 million subscribers. Think about that. This is 7 million parents who have a nanny to pay. And Breedlove says, I got this little $9 million company with 10,000 customers. Like if 1% of your 7 million buy my payroll service, that's 70,000 customers. That's a business 7 times the size of my business. Anyways, long story short, care.com acquired Stephanie's little $9 million business for $54 million.
Nice.
Which is like 6 times revenue. It's an outlandishly good offer, like almost incomprehensible multiple. And it was only made possible because Stephanie chose to do the one thing. Care.com would never have bought her company had she gotten into lawn care and dog walking and snow removal, right? It was just that she had the courage and conviction to do the one thing. And that is the biggest mistake most entrepreneurs make, is they start when they've got a little bit of revenue and a few customers, cross-selling existing customers new services. And it makes your revenue pop, and it makes you kind of feel proud of yourself, and you can thump your chest and say, oh, I got $1 million in sales or 5 million in sales or whatever the number. But you're diluting your unique value proposition. And that not only dilutes it for customers, but more importantly, it makes your business less desirable for acquirers. And so I think the one thing I would leave your audience with is avoid the temptation of just cross-selling existing customers new things, and instead to focus on the one thing which you are differentiated offering, and just have the discipline to stay with that.
That's huge. And just that, I feel like I need to clip out just that last one section and give it to 2 people that I have in mind exactly, because I mean, you're so right that it's easy to do, just to kind of make new products and sell it to the same audience and get that pop in revenue, and that works temporarily, and that might even be a little bit satisfying to the ego and the work ethic, and you feel like, cool, sure. I'm filling in all these, I'm filling in all these extra hours, and kind of separate from that, you always hear this advice of just be known for one thing and like become the best in your niche and build the list. And I think what's been missing from that advice, until you just mentioned what you did, is like the reason for building the list, and the reason for becoming known about one thing, and the reason for like doing this kind of like 80-20, and the reason for going out there and marketing and, you know, being on podcasts like you're doing right now, and like getting more attention and talking to the people that you want to. And so many people give this advice without a reason to. So the reason to become known for one thing is that way you can find these prospects who could buy your company, and that way you can see why, well, would they be buying me for just this little piece of it, or would they be buying me for all of it? And then if you make that comparison of, well, my database of people that they can just roll into their service is this size, and their user count is that size, they're making this amount of money per month, so they know that if they just rolled this into that, then it would be this amount of money for them. So then the acquisition is a no-brainer. I mean, so many things in life, John, people gave me advice to, but there was never a reason behind it. And now there's a reason to focus on that one thing and not let all the maybe temporarily not stupid, but long-term stupid decisions happen.
Yeah, I mean, just play the end game, right? And it's the same message that transcends virtually all of what I talk about. I mean, you know, I'm glad to mention you've got your child. Congratulations, by the way, that's amazing. One of the things that I think will help your listeners, if they are parents, is to start thinking of their business as opposed to thinking of your job as sort of the CEO of your business. Think of it as the parent of your company. And as you will now know, as a young dad, you know that in the early days, you are responsible for everything that child does, right? When it goes to the bathroom, when it sleeps, when it burps, like you do it all for them, right? But then over time, as they, become adolescents and teenagers, the aspiration hopefully is that they start to become little independent adults and eventually fully functioning adults. And they are in the universe living independently. And I think that's the greatest sort of achievement as a parent is that your child is a happy, functioning member of society and they don't need you anymore. That's the same philosophy that I think entrepreneurs would benefit from taking in building their business, as opposed to chasing revenue, which is vanity, right? It's just the next big thing. Instead, think, you know what? My job as the parent of this business is to create it so that one day, not yet, but one day, it can succeed without me. And that's the ultimate panacea, I think, for an entrepreneur, because again, that gives you all the cards as an entrepreneur. Once your business can succeed without you, you could sell it. You could bring on a manager and run it. You could take as much time as you want off. You can live the lifestyle that you aspire to have. All of those things are possible. But the prerequisite is that it can succeed without you. And that is the job of a parent, in my view. And I think it should be the job of most entrepreneurs as well.
I agree. Prop it up, build it, but then don't strangle it, right? Like make it where your business can grow without you, and you're not stifling that growth. And so I like a lot about how you think here. We're getting a lot of instead of getting lost in like the facts and the cliches, it seems like your sort of communication style is there's a harsh truth that you hit us with, and then like maybe a data-filled story in there to get us to the point that you're trying to get across. And so if people want to know more about you and what you have going on and the ways that your training and your podcast and your books and things can help them to get to where they need to go, which is a business that they can sell and that grows without them, where do they go? What do they do to find out more about the great John Warrillow empire?
Well, it's really simple. builttosell.com/marketer. So we put together a little landing page for your listeners where they can download the 9 subscription model worksheet, which will allow them to identify a subscription model that might be cool. We've got a video series on the drivers of company value. There's a cheat sheet and a workbook for folks who want to ultimately sell their company. So it's all free, and it's just builttosell.com/marketer.
Fantastic. We will see you there. builttosell.com/marketer. Go there right now before the podcast is over, while it's still fresh on your mind. And maybe listen to this podcast episode 2 or 3 times, because John had so much information, and I'm going to take that to heart. I'm going to write that down maybe again and again every day. Don't cross-sell so much. Looking to be known for one thing. That way you can get a buyer for your business, maybe not today or tomorrow, but eventually. That way, when your business outgrows you, or you get bored, or you want to get into bigger and better things, you have options, you have choices. You haven't built a glorified job for yourself. You can have something that grows without you. builttosell.com/marketer. And thanks, John, for showing up and for helping us out with these problems that we've had that maybe we don't even know about, but we need your help to solve.
Thanks, Rob. It was good to be with you.